Over the past days, I've received thousands of hate messages. Over the past days, I've received thousands of hate messages for helping a church group find a place to have Easter services. This has caused me to be discouraged, and it's made me reflect again upon our current situation in this country. In fact, to the point that I just wanted to not even speak again, or even do a video like this. In fact, I even took my phone and I tossed it in the trees next to my house. And a few minutes later, my daughter came in. She was out feeding the ducks, and she came in and said, "Dad, your phone, and it's broken." So then I said, "Well, I don't want it anymore." And I said, "Throw it out there." And she threw it back out there. And it was just a few minutes later. Another daughter of mine bring the phone back. She didn't know it was thrown and says, "Dad, your phone was out here and it's broken." And I said I didn't want it. So I threw it again. And then I went on a little drive with my two youngest daughters, enjoyed their company and enjoyed the beautiful country and hills of Idaho. When I come back, the phone was on the counter. My son had found it. And he said, "Dad, I'll fix it for you. If you want me to, I'll fix it for you." And but I really don't want to do this, but I can't stop, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to do the best I can to tell you why. And I have written notes, and anytime you just don't want to keep listening, then don't listen anymore. But in late 2013, I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail, so just bear with me or get off. It doesn't matter. But in late 2013, my life was about as good as anybody's life could be. I was extremely prosperous in my business. It was one of the largest private fleet maintenance services in Phoenix, Arizona. I had a great reputation. I had more work than I could handle, great employees. I mean, my life was good. I was making really good money. And I had time because I had such great staff and employees and a good system. I actually had time to actually do a lot of extra things. And with that time, I was also serving as a first counselor and a bishopric for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I had previously just served 5 years in a stake office. And my life was about as good as it could get. But with that extra time, I wanted to do good with. And I began to pray to God to ask Him what He would want me to do, what He wanted me to do with my time. And in late 2013, I saw, I don't know if you want to call it a vision, maybe I don't know what a vision is, but I saw clearly, it was given to me, two paths. And one was a very exciting path of joy and actually even comfort and happiness and even honor, people honoring me. And that path was serving in the church. Maybe going on a mission or in some capacity serving, the Lord and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that path was a path full of joy and a path that was very desirable to me, to be able to go and to participate in and to bring people to the gospel and to the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. There was another path that I saw, side by side, parallel. They were parallel with each other. And this second path was a much more difficult path. It was a path of people despising. It was a path of battle. It was a path of everybody, most people around you not understanding, um, a path of reviling against you. And it was a difficult path, one that was being forged uphill, very difficult. But then the interesting thing that I saw was that the path of the spreading the gospel and following the path of that, of being able to be, serve in a church, serve Christ, teach the gospel, that path was not possible without others forging the other path. That's what I understood. But at the time I saw this, I did not know which path the Lord wanted me to go down. And so I began to pray and ask the Lord which path I was to go down. Which path? I could see that they were both necessary, that they were both important, that they were both desirable and honorable to God. But I did not know which path I was to go down. One was much, much easier than the other. But one was necessary in order for the other to be possible. And then in early 2014, my family was faced with a great trial. And as many of you know, my family was threatened, and they were the federal agencies were ramping up a military-like force against my family. And I told my father when this was happening, they were literally building a military base to basically come against my family, to take our ranch away, because my dad said no. And I felt like, I knew what my dad was doing was right, but I also felt like, his decisions were his decisions and my decisions are mine. And he made his bed, and I really don't want to go lay in his bed. That's how I felt, right? But after much contemplating, prayer, and really just, trying to seek what was right and what was happening, I felt compelled to go to the ranch and to do what I could to try to preserve the ranch and try to protect my family and to try to help and be honorable to my father and my mother. And so I left. Now I want you to understand that I felt at that time like that I was a great patriot. I guess in the sense that, I loved my country. I honored our flag. I even had family meetings where I would, bring people together and talk about the flag, how to take care of it, what the colors and the stars and the stripe means, and basically connect that to those who have died for us. And in fact, multiple times I really disliked it when we went to like a parade and people would take those little flags and then when they were done, they just throw them on the ground. I don't think it was intentional, but they wouldn't take care of them. And multiple times my children and I would go and pick those all up because they didn't belong on the ground. And I was the guy who during the election season, I was passing out registration forms, actively encouraging people to vote. I had multiple signs of different elected or people that were candidates in my front yard that I felt would be best to serve in the positions. And this is who I was. And then I go to the ranch in 2014, and because of a threat that my family was facing. And when I came off the Mormon Mesa, it was a long drive to Nevada. When I came off the Mormon Mesa, down into the Virgin Valley and towards the Bundy Ranch, I could not believe what I saw. I couldn't believe that this was our country, that this was the United States of America, and that there was hundreds of armed men, agents of our own government, coming down upon a small little ranching family for doing something that we've done for 140 years. I saw armored vehicles, helicopters. I saw them out collecting our cattle. I saw guards all along each path of the road, any way out to the range. There was armed guards. I saw signs everywhere. I saw convoys of armed vehicles, up and down the road. And one of the best ways to explain it is it was like a scene out of Red Dawn, the movie Red Dawn. And it literally tore something in my soul when I saw that coming down into the valley I grew up in, into the land I love, to the country I love. When I saw that, it tore a hole in me. And it remained there throughout the time I was there that day. And then that night, that evening, I parked my little trailer, my little camp trailer, and I got in it, and I tried to sleep. It was late. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was too bothered by what was happening. I could not sleep. I couldn't find peace, and I could see this great danger that was facing my family. And not only that, but even worse, I could see that if this is the pattern, if this is where we're at in America, that all those things that I believed and I thought and stood for and, I really believed was going to be lost. And so I didn't know what else to do but I began to pray. I began to pray, and I prayed all through the night. And so it would have been Tuesday morning, the 8th, 2014, early morning, probably 2 or 3 in the morning. I again began to see what was going to happen. Now, I don't, you can say whatever you want. I don't care. But I began to see what was about to transpire over the next few days and a few other things. And the best I can explain it is it came in 3 folds. One, I began to understand and see that the Lord was going to protect my family. And that was a great joy to me, a great relief to me. He was going to protect, preserve my family, even against the great force that was upon us. 2, I began to understand that many people would come to the ranch and help our family. I didn't understand how, I didn't know when, but I understand it was happening, was going to happen. And I believe my dad had this same understanding because the day before on Monday, he went to Las Vegas with a horse trailer and he filled it clear full of bottled water. Now, what in the world would our little family need of a full pallets and pallets full of bottles of water? But he went and did this silently and came back. I believe he was understanding the same thing. The third part of this, what I was understanding, and it has become the most important part, and that is that I was shown that what was about to transpire would be a pattern, that we would be shown, the people would be shown a pattern that must continue to happen in order for people to retain their freedoms. And I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand what it meant. What was even going to happen. I didn't know. But I knew and understand that whatever was going to happen was going to set a pattern that we needed to follow. It was going to show us a pattern that we needed to follow in order to preserve liberty. And so then what happened is it was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely amazing what happened over the next few days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday. And then they were gone. All of them, hundreds and hundreds of federal agents armed to the hilt, helicopters, AMRAMPs, Gone like that. Gone, literally, just gone. And my family was facing no threat or force. We never lost our ranch. We never lost, they never took one cow off the ranch. Now, they did kill several, but we recovered from that. They did destroy some infrastructure, but we recovered from that fairly quickly. Right? Amazing. Amazing. And what it was one man saying no. One man saying no. And then when his rights were being threatened because he said no, thousands came around him. Thousands of people came around him and protected him. That was the pattern. That was the pattern. I am certain of it. I know that was the pattern. One person saying no, and then when there's a force that comes to try to destroy his rights, then thousands surrounding him in the protection of that. That was what the Lord showed me was going to straighten out and preserve freedom. It wasn't a rebellion. It wasn't anything. It was just that simple. Just say no, and then other people surround them in defense when those rights were to be taken. That was that simple. And that's what I began to understand. Right? I began to understand that. I began to understand lots of things after this. My eyes were open. I could not, believe before. I would have never believed before that our country was in the state it was in. And that was 6 years ago. So then what happened to me is, you just get overwhelmed with so much. And I felt like, I felt like I had to focus on trying to help people understand this pattern. I felt like it was shown to me and that I was needing to help people understand it. So I began to speak all over. I began to teach, at high schools and academies and wherever people would invite me. And I began to teach this, to teach the principles that to maintain rights, you have to claim them, use them, and then defend them. And part of defense is to calling on your neighbors and your friends and the good people of this country to help you defend them. And I did. I spoke all over, right? All over. And it wasn't so that I could be an attention hog. It was so that I could share what I learned from the Lord, from this experience, this amazing experience I saw. And my family saw, and many others saw the success of what happened there at the ranch. And it had nothing to do with violence. Nothing. That was a lie. That's a lie that the media has been expressing, that it had to do with violence. It had nothing to do with violence, at least on our part. So then my family moves. I feel very directly, and my wife felt that we needed to move. We need to get our family in a place. I move 2.5 hours away from the Ammon family. And someone sends me information about them. And again, I felt I felt compelled to act for this family. It wasn't for anything else. I felt like I had understood a pattern that the Lord wanted us to follow, and I had great compassion and love for this family. That was very much like our family, ranching family, being attacked by pretty much the same people we were being attacked by. Many similarities. I went and visited them. I immediately had a great love for them, and I knew they were in a terrible situation. They were being charged as domestic terrorists for maintaining their ranch under a statute that was meant for someone who blew up a federal building. And they were facing 5 years in federal prison for the second time, and most of you know that. But I felt the injustice was too great to ignore, even though I really wanted to. I really wanted to ignore it. So anyhow, I began to try to get, local representatives to do their duty and to stand as a buffer for this family, to start defending them. I tried to get the sheriff to do so, and all of them ultimately just began to, say there's nothing they could do, or ignore me. We did an official redress of grievance. They wouldn't respond to it. I find out later, that the FBI had basically threatened them and told them that if they responded in any way that they could be complicit in a conspiracy. Terrible when you're talking about a Republican form of government and you're trying to get relief from your Republican leaders or from your, leaders in this country, and you got an agency saying that if the elected representatives or the people that are in the positions of leadership in our republic are being told that they are complicit, or that they could be charged in a conspiracy if they even communicate with me. Terrible. Anyway, I know. So what happened there was I was basically left, and I knew I needed to do something, but I was left with no avenue or mechanism to try to protect the Hammonds. And so, again, through this whole process, I was trying to seek the Lord's guidance. And I'm asking the Lord specifically, Lord, what do I do? What do I do to help the Hammonds? I do not know. I've tried everything I know to do. What do I do? And many people were aware, so I knew there was people there, right? People were waiting and aware and watching, but I didn't know what to do. And so the Lord made it very specific. And this is what he told me. This is exactly what he told me, what he put in my mind. And it was, go into the refuge. And I thought, oh my goodness, did I hear that right? I continued to pray. I must not be understanding that right. So then again, extremely clear to me, go into the refuge. Well, that was just too much for me. That was way too much for me. I did not want to lose my family. I didn't want to be separated from them. It just seemed too extreme. Just too extreme. It was too much. So I stopped praying. And I actually, my grandmother died right at that time. I went down to her funeral. And this was on my mind constantly. But I began to put it off. And I shrunk from it. I literally shrunk from it. Because I could see the seriousness of it. And then when I got back from her funeral, which was down in Nevada, I spent several days down there. I began again to just ask for understanding. And the Lord told me that, Ammon, if you do not do as I say, after you know what you are supposed to do, that you will not find peace in this life or peace in the next. And there was many other pieces that I'm not going to share with you that I understood. And so at that time, I committed myself and I committed to the Lord that I would do as he had asked and go into the refuge. And I did not know what was going to happen. And I did not know a whole lot other than I knew I was supposed to go into the refuge. I knew it. And I know today for certain that I was to go into the refuge and give the people a choice. To give the people a choice of which way they were going to go. which way they were going to, what they were going to choose, and to get them to see a difference, and to try and save this little family, the Hammond family. Now, a lot of you know part of the story. Ultimately, what happened was there was a great gathering. There was a tremendous amount of support. But ultimately, because of fear, those who normally should support shrunk themselves and would not come and join us. And ultimately, because of this fear, the community rejected us. And there was really only one thing to be done. And they ended up ambushing us. The federal government ended up ambushing us on a road. They killed Lavoy Finicum, and they put us in prison. Now, in prison was a very difficult thing. There was so much pain, and I asked the Lord many times at the beginning of my incarceration, why, Lord? You asked me to do this. Why am I here? Why am I separated from my family? Why am I experiencing so much pain? Why is my family experiencing so much pain? My brothers and my family, they arrested all my brothers, even the ones who weren't at the refuge. My dad, many friends, and I looked and I was thinking about Lavoy's family and Lavoy, and feeling this great weight because of my decisions. At least that's the way I felt it. And I'm asking the Lord why, because I knew one thing for sure, one thing for certain, and that was that the Lord told me to go into the refuge and to wake these people up, to give them a choice. And it was hard to now be in the circumstance I was in and see all that was happening. And, I'm asking the Lord why. Well, the Lord showed me many things, including that the enemies of my family were plotting to try to destroy my family through prosecution. But they were going to wait until just the very end of the statute of limitations, which I don't know what that was, 5 or 7 years. They were going to wait to the very end, and then they were going to arrest and prosecute my family for Nevada. And by this time, there would be very little support for my family. Very little. Anybody would probably would remember our family. And partly this effort, or this going into the refuge and getting arrested, basically now they were going to prosecute us for everything, and a lot of people were paying attention, and he was going to show and use this as a way to show his hand to thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of millions of people, to show his hand in protecting my family, so people would know again that he is going to protect my family, and that the cause for liberty is important. And I began to understand that, and that certainly came true. I also began to understand, get to my notes here, I also began to understand several other things. Including that, again, hang on, let me just get here. So including that he was going to keep his promises to me, which is that to protect my family. He was going to protect my family, and he was going to make sure that we were protected, but that we had to endure this for a little while. In 2000 early, so now we were arrested at the beginning of 2016. Now at the beginning of 2017, I began to see more of what the Lord was going to do. In fact, I began to see what the Lord was going to do to the prosecutors. And I actually felt so sorry for the prosecutors because of what he was going to do to them, that I felt compassion for them. I almost felt sorry for them. But this understanding in 2017 brought. Remember, I'm incarcerated with my father, brothers, and many friends. Our families now. This has been for now a year. We've been completely. All our charges were acquitted in Oregon by a jury. But then they took us down to Nevada, prosecuted us. We were facing 106 years of minimum sentencing. But I began to see how the Lord was going to deliver us. 2017. I didn't know it was going to take a full year to happen. But this gave me a lot of confidence. And I actually began to be more bold. Well, that boldness caused me to be thrown into solitary confinement. And in 2017, I spent pretty close to half of the year on and off in solitary confinement, sometimes months at a time. But this solitary confinement gave me the opportunity to study and become very dependent on the Spirit of the Lord. Because a man will break under those circumstances, under those conditions, if he does not have the Lord to hold him up. So as you know, in early 2018, just as I had been shown, the Lord fulfilled his promises, and we were released, and our case was dismissed with prejudice. This was after a very, very terrible time, two years, and the last year with tremendous amount of, solitary confinement, abuse, and different things. We were released, and I was finally able to hold my family, my wife, and my children, which I had not been able to physically see or hold for 2 years. And I just felt like, at that time, I just wanted to keep silent. I just wanted to be silent. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to, I didn't want to do anything public. I just wanted to bring my family around them and hold them and love them and keep them close to me, my wife and my children. I didn't want anything, but, it just couldn't happen that way. People kept coming, and people were, wanting to, anyway, and that's what I wanted. I wasn't even going to get a phone. I wasn't going to get a phone. I wasn't going to, get on the computer. I wasn't going to open my Facebook account or nothing. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted to keep them around me and love them. But as time went on, I began to feel compelled. I began to feel compelled to open my mouth to warn the people again of the direction we are going if we do not change it. But again, all I wanted to do is to take care of my family. And I'm still struggling with this now. That's why my phone. That's why I threw my phone and tried to get rid of it. Because I don't want to do this. I would rather, I love to, work on vehicles. I love to, build and to invent and to produce. I love that. I love to help other people with their issues when it comes to vehicles and business and so forth. And most importantly, I love to spend time with my family. My 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls, and my beautiful, wonderful wife. And I don't like to do this. But I felt compelled, again, to warn. And to warn and let people know that our country is headed for a massive cliff. And we will crumble at the rocks at the bottom if we do not correct our direction. And in fact, when I look at my children, I am sad for them. I look at them. I look at my daughter who's, supposed to graduate this year. She's going into the world. And I'm sad for them. My sons who will have to provide for families someday. That'll be their responsibility to bring food on the table and to provide shelter. I'm sad for them because they will not have the opportunities that I have had. They won't. Especially as we continue down this path. They will not. And it makes me sad. And I think of all the millions of other youth. It makes me sad. And why? Because I have seen what is going to happen. And the battle for liberty in this land is actually almost over. And in fact, most don't even know that the battle has begun. But it's almost over. The battle for freedom is almost over. And most of you don't even know it's begun, or say, well, I'll fight when it starts. But no, it's almost over in this country. And that saddens me. Now, I want to say a few things, and you may be offended by it. But I don't really care at this time. I just do not. I love you, but I don't care if you're offended, because I love you more than my fear of offending you. So I speak first to the Christians that believe that the Lord will make it okay, so there's no need to make it all okay, so there's no need to do anything. That you can just be idle and wait for the Lord. You who believe that are the most wicked of all. You are they who the Lord will spew out of his mouth because you're lukewarm. You are they who have buried your talent for fear you will lose it. And in the end, he will take that talent from you and give it to someone who has been more of a faithful servant than you. Because where there is liberty, there is Christ. For no man can infringe upon another man's rights and be in accordance with Christ's teaching. And no man who professes and to know and follow Christ can stand idle while watching others, his neighbors' liberties, or even his own liberties, be stripped. The battle for liberty began before this life, even before your life, before this earth was even created. And it will perpetuate throughout eternity. And how you stood for liberty before this life determines whether or not you qualified for this life. And how you stand for liberty now in this life will have eternal consequences in the life to come. Because God cannot have a society, clear full of people. He can't have his kingdom clear full of people that won't fight for agency. That won't fight for freedom to choose, to act, to love, to serve, to worship, to follow the eternal plan of happiness. He cannot build his kingdom and have his kingdom full of people that will not stand for each other's liberties. So your eternal consequence will be not to be in the kingdom of God if you are not willing to stand for liberty. It is just that simple. It is that simple. We all have need of great repentance. I have great need, and I will begin today again. And I ask you to do the same. For those of you who think, now also, move on. For those of you who think that the action taken over the past few weeks by world government is only because of a virus, you are naive to the wickedness of men. The quest is and has been to destroy the agency of man, including our liberty to worship God, to love and care for our families, to enjoy life and produce. The quest is to make us miserable like them and to give them power to control and manipulate the world, the people of this world. It is to set in place the measures that will cause us to basically cause the masses, the people, to accept the control, to accept it, so that everybody will just accept it, and to identify those who will not accept it, so that they can be removed or dealt with. And right now, the battle of whose rights belong to is almost over. Whose rights they are is almost over. Does the right, let me ask you this question, these questions. Does the right to travel belong to you, or does it belong to the state? Does the right to work and produce belong to you, or to the state? Does the right to worship, to gather together, to enjoy our neighbors belong to you or to the state? Do your children belong to you or to CPS? Does the right to decide what you will do with your time belong to you, or does it belong to the state? This is the battle that is raging and is almost over. We must use our rights. We must use them. We must claim them, right? We must use them so that others do not claim them. We must use them and let those who are trying to claim them know that they do not belong to the state or anyone else. This use of rights is not out of rebellion or hate or despise. It is actually out of love. Love for God and for what He has given us as a people, each of us, and love for each other, so that we can continue to live in happiness and worship and to God as we choose to. This is the battle that we are facing. This is it. Whose rights are they? Do they belong to the state, or do they belong to you? Now, you may ask, well, the state's not so bad, right? You may say, well, the state's not so bad, but when those rights that belong to you are taken by the state, then they can easily be taken by those who control the states. And those rights were given to you by God through His Son, Jesus Christ. They are your endowment. You will be accountable if you give them away, like a pot of porridge. As I speak right now, those manipulating the states are claiming our rights. And the best way to combat this is to claim them back by exercising them, by actually using them. And so this is what we should be doing. We must use them. And again, let those that are trying to claim them know that they do not belong to the state or anyone else. This use of rights is not out of rebellion or hate or despise. Again, it is out of love. Love for God, love for what He has given us, and love for each other, our fellow man. so that we can continue to live in happiness and worship Him. Now, I believe, I've gone on for quite a while, I believe that Christ will come. I believe the Bible. I believe the other scriptures. I believe in the Book of Mormon. I believe that there are many, many, many words that God has given us that has pointed us to what is happening now. And I believe and know that those words also teach us that Christ will come. But will He come to a free people or an oppressed people? That is up to us. Will we reach out our hands towards Him when He comes with gratitude and love and praise because we have chosen Him to keep us free? Or will we reach out with our hands towards Him with shackles upon them, begging Him to unbind those shackles and to free us? That choice is ours. Whether we remain free until He comes, or whether we are oppressed and bound with shackles, and then He comes. And I say, my friends, those who I love, I say we stand and retain our freedom, because that we will be held accountable for. So that when He does come, we are free when He comes. Now, I've taken enough of your time, and I hope now you understand me a little more. And for those who don't, I don't know what else I can do to help you. And I pray that you can see these efforts such as helping a church group be able to have worship services on Easter. How it is basically an effort to show that these rights belong to the people and not to the state. This virus thing will come and go. But what won't come and go is the loss of our liberties. If we lose our liberty and the battle is almost over, there's only one way to get it back. That's proven in history. And God requires us to do those things. He requires us to stand and maintain our liberties. Why? Because it is eternal. And do not dismiss that. Do not dismiss that. I love you. I know that God lives. I know that Christ brings justice to all things. He makes all things right. He will restore all things. All things must be made right. And if we do not take advantage of His atoning sacrifice for us, then we will have to pay for our own sins. Because all things must be made right. That is why Christ and His teachings and His actions are the only way. No other religion has a path or a way to make all things right. And God, in order to be a just God, in order to keep order in the universe, all things must be made right. And He has done this through His Son, Jesus Christ. It is the only way. I'm thankful for Him. I'm thankful that He has provided a way for us to right our wrongs without having to suffer. And I know that one of the first principles of heaven is agency, because we could not even choose Him or choose any path without it. So I'm grateful for Him. I love Him. And I love you. And I say these things in His name with as much fervor as I can, asking you to stand and to see what is truly happening. Thank you.